Tom Kavanek, and I'm the Solutions Marketing Manager for HSDT, or what we call here at Panduit, High Speed Data Transport. One of the things I wanted to talk about today was 40 gigabit Ethernet, more specifically migrating from 10 gigabit Ethernet to 40 gigabit Ethernet. On the fiber side, the thing to consider with 40 gigabit Ethernet is that the connectors that were used for 10 gigabit Ethernet, LC connectors, are not used for 40 gigabit Ethernet. What's used is the MPO multi-fiber connector. So when migrating from 10 gigabit Ethernet to 40 gigabit Ethernet, what one will have to do is on the fiber trunk side, disconnect the cassette from the fiber trunk, use one of these, which is a fiber adapter panel, and plug the trunk into the fiber adapter panel. Then use MTP patch cords to connect from the fiber adapter panel to the switching equipment. Right now, today, there is no twisted pair copper solution for 40 gigabit Ethernet. So what that means is the ubiquitous RJ45 plug jack combination and the twisted pair cable are not used for 40 gig. What's used for 40 gigabit Ethernet is what's called a QSFP plus direct attach copper cable assembly. Basically, it's twin-X copper cable that's terminated at both ends with modules that are then plugged into the QSFP ports. Range, or the reach on that kind of cable is limited to 7 meters if it's passive. If it's an active cable, it's 15 meters. So that means the RJ45 infrastructure starts to go away for 40 gigabit Ethernet. 40 gig is made up of 4 lanes of 10 gigabit Ethernet. You have to make sure that the receive and the transmit fibers are connected to the right positions at both ends. Otherwise, you have the transmit fibers talking to the other transmit fibers. And there's several different ways to manage that polarity, and the IEEE has 3 methods: method A, method B, and method C. And which method you use will depend on your fiber cable infrastructure that you had previously installed. All things being equal, and where possible, Panduit's recommendation is to use method B, because with method B, you can use only one type of MTP patch cord, so you don't have to manage 2 inventories of patch cords or worry about having the right patch cord at the right time. The other thing to consider with 40 gigabit Ethernet is you've got a 40 gigabit port and a switch, and you still have 10 gig servers. You have servers that have 10 gigabit Ethernet ports. What do you do now? Almost all of the switch vendors that are deploying 40 gigabit Ethernet, you can take that one 40 gigabit pipe, and instead of treating those 4 10 gigabit streams as one 40 gigabit pipe, you can break that out into 4 individual 10 gigabit streams. And what that requires is what we call a breakout cable. And on one end of the cable is a QSFP module that would be plugged into your 40 gigabit port. And the other end of the cable is broken out into 4 SFP plus connections, which are then connected into the servers with the 10 gigabit ports. That exists for the copper. That's a direct attach copper cable assembly. For fiber, we have sort of the same thing, except since you're plugging into optical modules, the fiber optic cable on one end has a 12 fiber MTP that gets plugged into the QSFP plus optical module. The other end of the fiber is broken out into 4 duplex LC connections, which are then connected to the servers. One question you might be asking yourself is, what's the need for 40 gigabit Ethernet? One of the main drivers for 40 gigabit Ethernet is server virtualization. So with server virtualization, each virtual machine that's running on that blade server still needs the same amount of bandwidth or speed or networking speed that it did when it was a standalone server. So if you have a standalone server, one machine, let's say it needs a couple hundred megabits per second in order to perform its job, and you now virtualize that machine, and let's say you have 40 of those virtual machines running on one blade server, now you need several gigabits per second speed in order to make sure all those 40 machines can still get at the same bandwidth that it needed before. Certainly, migrating from 10 gigabit Ethernet to 40 gigabit Ethernet is a little bit more complicated than what I've covered here in this short video. So if you need more information, please check out the Panduit website for the case studies. We have white papers and other things that we have to help you in your migration from 10 gig to 40 gigabit Ethernet. Thank you.